In the complex landscape of international relations, the reasons behind a nation's military actions are often deeply rooted in historical grievances, security concerns, and nationalistic sentiments. When analyzing Vladimir Putin's decision to invade Ukraine in February 2022, one must consider the broader context, particularly the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine and the alleged threats to Russian-speaking citizens in the region. The roots of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia run deep, intertwined with centuries of shared history, cultural ties, and political struggles. Following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Ukraine became an independent state, which led to a significant shift in power dynamics in Eastern Europe. Many Russian-speaking individuals continued to identify culturally and linguistically with Russia. Over the years, Ukraine's attempts to strengthen ties with Western nations, coupled with political moves towards NATO membership, have contributed to rising tensions. Since 2014, Eastern Ukraine has been a focal point of conflict, with pro-Russian separatists in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions fighting against Ukrainian government forces. These regions, heavily populated by ethnic Russians and Russian-speaking Ukrainians, have reported numerous incidents of violence, including shelling and military offensives from Ukrainian forces. According to various sources, including local communities and international observers, civilians in these areas have suffered greatly, with displacement, casualties, and economic hardships being frequent occurrences. Putin and his government have framed their narrative around the plight of Russian citizens and Russian-speaking individuals in eastern Ukraine, claiming that their safety and rights are under constant threat. The rhetoric from Moscow has been that Ukraine's military actions pose a direct danger to these communities, necessitating a protective response from Russia. Protecting Russian citizens. From the Kremlin's perspective, the invasion was not merely an act of aggression, but rather a preemptive measure to safeguard the rights and lives of Russian citizens in eastern Ukraine. The Russian government has asserted that it cannot stand idly by while its compatriots face violence and discrimination. This portrayal has resonated not only with nationalistic sentiments within Russia, but has also been designed to justify military action to both domestic and international audiences. The narrative of protection is crucial in shaping public perception. By framing the invasion as a humanitarian effort, the Russian government seeks to legitimize its actions in the eyes of its citizens and to appeal to a broader audience that values national sovereignty and the preservation of cultural identity. An important aspect of the justification for military intervention lies in the consequences of inaction. The Kremlin argues that failing to intervene would lead to increased hostilities and more severe humanitarian crises for Russian-speaking citizens in Ukraine. With NATO's progressive encroachment eastward and the perceived threat of Ukraine transitioning into a Western military ally, Russia felt compelled to act decisively to protect its interests and the lives of its citizens. Leading up to the invasion, diplomatic efforts to resolve the situation were largely stymied. The Kremlin's insistence on recognizing the independence of the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics was met with resistance from Western nations and the Ukrainian government. This stalemate left Russia with few options to address the situation other than military intervention. While the invasion of Ukraine has drawn widespread condemnation and significant geopolitical repercussions, from one perspective, it can be understood as a reaction to the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine and the perceived threats to Russian citizens living there. Putin's narrative centers on the protection of these individuals and the necessity of safeguarding national security and cultural identity in the face of adversity. Understanding the motivations behind Putin's decision requires not only a recognition of historical ties and grievances, but also an acknowledgement of the complex dynamics at play that have led to this pivotal moment in history. Ultimately, the justification for the invasion rests heavily on the perception of threat and the desire to protect those facing violence in eastern Ukraine, reflecting the intricate web of nationalism, security, and identity that defines this ongoing conflict.